Okay, we are going to start reading the Odyssey at book 9. And you might be asking yourself, okay, so what about books 1 through 8? Well, the Odyssey is not written in chronological order. So if you were to start at book 1 on page 1, you're actually starting in the middle of Odysseus' story. It goes all over the place. Chronologically, he starts telling his story at book 9. So when we start to read here is the situation. It is now 9 years after the Trojan War. So he's been away from home for 19 years. Now remember, he told his wife that if our son gets a beard, or 20 years go by before I get home, make sure you move on, make sure you marry somebody else. So he doesn't have any time left, right? He has to be getting home soon. And here on book 9, he has washed ashore in the kingdom of Phaeacia, which isn't very close to home, actually. He has nothing. He washed ashore without any ship, without a crew, with absolutely nothing. He was half dead. And a girl found him on the beach and dragged him up to the palace. Her father happens to be king of Phaeacia. His name is Alcinous. And so they give him food, they restore his health, they're throwing a party for this stranger who washed up on their shores. And in the party, Alcinous looks down at Odysseus and says, okay, so first of all, why are you sad? We're throwing you a party, you're alive, you should be happy. And secondly, who are you? So when Odysseus says, okay, you want to know my story? Here's my story. I am Laertes' son, Odysseus. And at this point, everybody has just assumed that Odysseus has been dead for years and years, because everybody else has already come home from the Trojan War like a decade ago. So they're all shocked. They're like, whoa, we thought you were dead. And then he begins, this is my story from what happened after I left the Trojan War. And remember, it was Poseidon who is upset with Odysseus for taking credit for the war and has made it very difficult for Odysseus to get home. So let's start. Now this was the reply Odysseus made. Remember, he's talking to Alcinous. It doesn't look like Alcinous because it's Greek, but that's how we're going to pronounce it. I don't really care how you do your pronunciations, whatever works for you. But he is now answering the question of who are you and why are you sad? It says, Alcinous, king and admiration of men, how beautiful this is, to hear a minstrel gifted as yours. A god he might be, singing. There is no boon in life more sweet, I say, than when a summer joy holds all the realm, and banqueters sit listening to a harper in a great hall, by rows of tables heaped with bread and roast meat, while a steward goes to dip up wine and brim your cups again. Here's the flower of life, it seems to me. But now you wish to know my cause for sorrow, and thereby give cause for more? What shall I say first? What shall I keep until the end? The gods have tried me in 1,000 ways. Oh, but first my name, let that be known to you. And if I pull away from pitiless death, friendship will bind us, though my land lies far. I am, you can imagine a drum roll in the background here, I am Laertes' son, Odysseus. Now, Laertes was a famous Greek warrior, so everybody knows who Odysseus is. He's famous. It's just that everybody thought he was dead. Men hold me formidable for guile in peace and war. Guile is the ability to use his mind to make tricks, right? To plan and plot is guile. This fame has gone abroad to the sky's rim. My home is on the peak sea mark of Ithaca, under Mount Neon's wind-blown robes of leaves, in sight of other islands, Dulican, Same, wooded Xanthos, Ithaca being most lofty in that coastal sea and northwest, while the rest lie east and south. A rocky isle, but good for a boy's training. I shall not see on earth a place more dear, though I have been detained long by Calypso, loveliest among goddesses, who held me in her smooth caves to be her heart delight. As Circe of Aea, the enchantress, desired me, and detained me in her hall. Yeah, we'll get to those stories later. And we'll see if we blame Odysseus for being gone so long. But in my heart I never gave consent. Where shall a man find sweetness to surpass his own home and his parents? In far lands he shall not, though he find a house of gold. That is to say, right, there's no place like home. Now, as we just got into this, you can sense this has the feel of a poem. It kind of looks like a poem. It's not rhyming, though, and there's not really a set rhythm to it. That's because this isn't Greek. Remember, this was written way before English was invented. So we're reading a translation into English. And what we are reading is as close to the original Greek as you can get. A lot of, like if you were to look up the Odyssey online or something, a lot of what you would get would be summaries of the actual poem. What we have and what we're reading from is a transliteration, about as close to the original Greek as possible, where they're taking every word and they're translating it. If you do that, of course, you're going to lose rhyming because it's not going to rhyme from one language to the next, but it's the best we can do. So here, Odysseus begins his story. What of my sailing then from Troy? Like, right? What happened? That was 9 years ago. What's going on? What of those years of rough adventure weathered under Zeus? The wind that carried west from Ilion brought me to Ismarus on the far shore. Ilion is another word for Troy. A strong point on the coast of the Cicones. I stormed that place and killed the men who fought. Plunder we took, and we enslaved the women to make division, equal shares to all. But on the spot I told them, back and quickly, out to sea again. My men were mutinous, fools on stores of wine. Sheep after sheep they butchered by the surf, and shambling cattle feasting, while fugitives went inland, running to call to arms the main force of Ciconians. Again, I know this doesn't look like Ciconians, so if you want to say Cicones, that's fine too. You understand what's happening? On his first stop, on his way home from Troy, they stopped to load their ships up with food and water and whatnot by plundering the city. Only his men were mutinous, right? While they're partying on the beach, a bunch of Ciconians run inland to get an army trained to fight on horseback or, where the ground required, on foot. They came with dawn over that terrain like the leaves and blades of spring. So doom appeared to us. Dark word of Zeus for us, our evil days. My men stood up and made a fight of it, back down the ships with lances kept in play, and from bright morning through the blaze of noon, holding our beach. Although so far outnumbered, but when the sun passed toward unyoking time, right? So by the time evening came, then the Achaeans, one by one, gave way. The Achaeans are Odysseus' forces. The Achaeans are the Greeks. 6 benches were left empty in every ship that evening when we pulled away from death, and this new grief we bore with us to sea. Our precious lives we had, but not our friends. No ship made sail next day until some shipmate had raised a cry 3 times for each poor ghost unfleshed by the Ciconians on that field. All right, so I'm going to pause there because I want to map this out. The Ciconians are their first stop on the way home, and you see that their fatal flaws are getting in the way of them getting home successfully. So let's jump over to the map. Okay, so this is the Journey of Odysseus assignment that you're going to find sitting there in Schoology. We're going to keep this map updated as we keep going through all of his adventures trying to get home. So click on the map part, and you'll see here is Ithaca, where he's trying to get home. Here is Troy, where he's leaving, from the war. And normally, you know, an ancient ship could make this, and you would kind of go along the coast like this because you don't want to get out in the open sea. You would be able to, within a couple weeks, get home from Troy to Ithaca on an ancient ship. But as we know, it's now 19 years later, and he's still not home. So the first stop was the Ciconians. I'm going to take this too, and I'm going to drop it right up here. All right, so this is where the Ciconians are. And I'm actually going to get a little fancy. I'm going to put a connector in there. So I'm going to do this curve, come out here to the water, and then I curve up along the shore. Double click that. Let me make that a big line so I can see it. Let me choose a color I can see. I'll go with yellow. All right. So the first stop was the Ciconians. So now I'm going to go out here, and I'm going to put the Ciconians. And what did we learn from that? Well, over here we actually learned that Odysseus's men were mutinous, right? So they stopped to plunder, but they got drunk and don't obey orders. Remember, Odysseus told them, like, get back on the ships. We got to go. We got to go. They don't. Instead, they party on the beach. And as they're partying, the large army from inland shows up and kills many men. So Odysseus says they lost 6 benches for every single one of their ships, right? So you would have, you know, the benches are where all the men sit to row the boat, and 6 of them are empty. That's how many people they lost. So the big takeaway here is that they were not disciplined. By disciplined, I mean they didn't have the self-discipline to just take what they needed and go. They were greedy and partied. You know, they were too sure of their victory, and they weren't cautious. And so what happened was the Ciconians came in force and killed a bunch of them. Okay, what's next? Okay, so onward with line 75. Odysseus says, now Zeus, the Lord of Cloud, roused in the north a storm against the ships, and driving veils of squall moved down like night on land and sea. The bows went plunging at the gust. Sails cracked and lashed out strips in the big wind. We saw death in that fury, dropped the yards, unshipped the oars, and pulled for the nearest lee. Then 2 long days and nights we lay offshore, worn out and sick at heart, tasting our grief, until a 3rd dawn came with ringlets shining. Then we put up our mast, hauled sail, and rested, letting the steersman and the breeze take over. I might have made it safely home that time, but as I came round Malea, the current took me out to sea, and from the north a fresh gale drove me on, past Cythera. 9 days I drifted on the teeming sea before dangerous high winds. Upon the 10th we came to the coastline of the Lotus Eaters, who live upon that flower. We landed there to take on water. All ships' companies mustered alongside for the midday meal. Then I set out 2 picked men and a runner to learn what race of men that land sustained. They fell in soon enough with Lotus Eaters, who showed no will to do us harm, only offering the sweet lotus to our friends. But those who ate this honeyed plant, the lotus, never cared to report, nor to return. They longed to stay forever, browsing on that native bloom, forgetful of their homeland. Those of you who've seen Percy Jackson or you've watched the Percy Jackson novels, you know they make pretty good use of this scene of the Lotus Eaters. They create a casino. And if you've ever been in a casino, there are no clocks, there are no windows, there's no way to know what time it is inside of a casino, so that 2 in the morning feels exactly like 2 in the afternoon. And that's kind of what happened here. Zeus blew, for his brother Poseidon, blew Odysseus' ships off course, where they land at this place where there's this flower drug, right? It makes you forget home. You want to stay forever. It makes you long to stay forever. And if you just think this through, it's a brilliant trap. Because Odysseus sends out 2 guys into the land to say, go check out who lives here, see if they can help us. And the 2 guys go, they get addicted to the flower, they don't come back. And so he sends out 2 more to go and figure out, what happened to those guys. They never came back. Same thing. They try the flower, they forget what they're doing, and they don't come back. And so the real danger of the lotus flower is that Odysseus and all of his men go and they take the flower and they no longer ever want to go home. It would be a perfect prison. Odysseus would be trapped there, addicted to this flower. See, even the ancient Greeks had an idea about what damage addiction could do to family, to home. And here he is in that perilous situation. But he finds them, and he says, I drove them, all 3, wailing to the ships, tied them down under their rowing benches, and called the rest, all hands aboard, come, clear the beach, and no one taste the lotus, or you lose your hope of home. And filing into their places by the rowlocks, my oarsmen dipped their long oars in the surf, and we moved out again on our seafaring. Odysseus just narrowly escapes that trap that was set for him. Okay, let's jump over to the map. So historians actually believe that there is this lotus flower and that you can find it way out here on the coast of Africa. So what exactly happened? Well, if you recall what we read, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in another connector here. So I'm going to put in a curve. As Odysseus starts his way home, right, he's got around the coast of Ithaca. Right around here, he tells us that Zeus sent up a big storm. And that storm lasted 9 days, right? So instead of being able to curve around and come back towards home, he actually gets blown way off course. And for 9 days, he gets blown all the way out here to the land of the Lotus Eaters. Again, let me make that big and let me make that yellow so that I can see it. Bad news. So now he's further away from home than he was when he actually started. So let's go here and we'll add the Lotus Eaters. So this is all about the danger of addiction as a trap. So it's a trap for Odysseus to keep him from going home. Remember, now Poseidon wants him to not go home, to teach him a lesson about the need for the gods. Now Odysseus, he doesn't fall prey to the addiction, even though some of his men do. So he ties the addicted men to the ship. They so desperately want to go back and get more lotus, and they escape. So Odysseus outwits the trap. That would be a short story, right? We probably wouldn't be reading it today if it ended here. If Odysseus just spent the rest of his days stuck eating this lotus flower, forgetting about his son at home, forgetting about his wife at home, forgetting about his kingdom, just living day to day, eating a flower. And there's got to be a lesson for us there today about drug addiction and its influence on home and family and relationships. Okay, next video we'll pick up the next piece of text.